All right, so Unit 7 is on Reconstruction, which is the time period after the Civil War. So again, there'll be a PDF and you can click on this. This is a link that tells you again. It's another short video that tells you more, so if you want more information. So Reconstruction starts after the Civil War is over in 1865 and it ends in 1877. So the Civil War ends and remains the deadliest war that America has ever been involved in, because it was Americans killing Americans. So over 500,000 Americans dead. Devastation to our territory, again, because of Sherman's march. You have complete and total devastation throughout the South. People dead. It's just utter and complete just devastation. So we've got to now put the country back together on top of this loss of life, and now we have all these newly emancipated slaves to how do we address that, and what does that look like in this country? And so emancipation, so you have all of these newly freed slaves, and they now want to make their marriages legal, and they want to try to find their relatives that may be on another plantation or somewhere else. So a lot of movement, or a lot of, not movement out of the South. Now, slaves don't really leave, or newly emancipated do not leave the South for about 50 years. So the idea that they're free and they're just like, I'm going to leave the South, we don't see a large movement of African Americans from the South until the early 1920s. It's called the Great Migration. Because again, this is what they knew, this is where their family was, and so this is where they predominantly stayed. The Freedmen's Bureau was established in March of 1865 while Lincoln was still alive, and it was established to assist newly emancipated African Americans in this process of becoming, assimilating into culture after no longer being slaves. So they knew that this was going to be inevitable. What does that look like? How can we start the process? So job skills, education, medical care, food, housing, things like that. And so the greatest success came in the way of education. So 3 important pieces, lots of legislation, lots and lots, but the 3 most important pieces of legislation that came out of Reconstruction are 3 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The 13th Amendment, which was passed and ratified in 1865, which abolished slavery in this country. The 14th Amendment was passed in 1866 and ratified in 1868, and it made all former slaves citizens. And the 15th Amendment, which was passed in 69 and ratified in 1870, and gave all black men the right to vote. So the Civil Rights Act of 1866, it actually predated the 14th Amendment, and it tried to give rights of citizens to newly emancipated African Americans, but they were not able to actually realize that, so they had to go a step further and pass the 14th Amendment. The Reconstruction Act of 1867 put the military in control of the South. The South, they wanted to make sure that the South did not do anything stupid again and rebellious, and they wanted to make sure that they were following all these new laws and amendments that they were putting in place. And so they put the South under military reconstruction, and part of it is that they had to rewrite their state constitutions and ratify the 13th and 14th Amendment before they could be readmitted to the Union. And Alabama has the longest state constitution in the United States. The Tenure of Office Act was passed in February of 1867, and it was technically unconstitutional because it took away powers of the president. The president has the right to choose his or her cabinet, because the cabinet is the advisors to the president. Well, the Radical Republicans did not like Andrew Johnson. Now, Andrew Johnson was technically a Democrat, and Lincoln had chosen him as his vice president because he He wanted a Democrat in the office with him so that when they brought the South back in, the South would feel like they had someone in the White House that would be in their alley, so to speak. And so he is fighting the radical Republicans at every turn. He's vetoing everything. Now they have the numbers that they can override their veto. So it's not that he's really shooting down their legislation. It's just more annoying than anything. So they passed the Tenure of Office Act, saying that he can't fire anyone from his cabinet without their approval. Again, that's unconstitutional. The president has the right to hire and fire whoever they want from their cabinet because it's their cabinet. But they knew that he was having a problem with a guy named Edwin Stanton, who was the Secretary of War, and they knew that he was getting ready to fire him, and so they passed this piece of legislation so they could basically trap him. And as soon as he fired Edward Stanton, they were like, gotcha, and they brought him up on impeachment charges. So they charged him with 11 high crimes and misdemeanors, and he is the first president in U.S. history to face impeachment charges. Now, the Klan does get started in this Reconstruction period. It was started by a former Confederate by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest. So if you've ever watched Forrest Gump, and he talks about he was named after his great-great-great-great-granddaddy. He used to like to ride around wearing bed sheets. That's somewhat historically accurate. It was, the name is similar. Nathan Bedford Forrest was the first Grand Wizard, which is like the highest ranking member of the Klan, and they don't wear white, they wear purple. And Congress passed the Enforcement Acts, and they hoped that they were wiping out the Klan. The Klan just went under cover, so to speak. So they did all their stuff under the cover of night. So it looked like the Klan had been wiped out, but they really were not wiped out, unfortunately. Reconstruction ends with the election of 1876. Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes ran in the election of 1876. Tilden was a Democrat. Hayes was a Republican. Tilden got 185 electoral votes. Hayes got 184. That's too close to award it. The Democrats were super mad. They were like, we won fair and square. It was a whole thing. So they had to come up with this compromise so that they would, because again, they felt like they were being cheated out of the White House. So Hayes became president. This is the compromise. Hayes became president. The South got troops out of the South. Reconstruction ended. Money to industrialize the South, and some appointment to some key positions within the White House. And that is the end of Reconstruction.